And coming out live despite the rain tonight. We're going to talk about tuition basics. But before I do that, I want you to look at the slide behind me. And at the far end of it, it's the family college money talk. So let's address some concerns right up front. Not everybody needs to go to college. This is about college, but I'm saying that if you have a child that doesn't want to go to college, that's okay. And here's how I can say that is because if you look at our book, some of the folks that have the most money are in traditional type, technical skills. So think of just like plumbers. As an example, you don't go to college; you go to a trade school or becoming a pilot. You go to a trade school, you can make an amazing, life fulfilling type wage, without going to college. But if you go to college, that's the purpose of this talk. And I have to agree. And most of my kids, to my kids, I was like, I think you should go to college, right? And both of them are in college right now, but you don't have to go to college. But if you do if you have your kids go to college, you might want to have that family talk before they go. With us, and I'll be open, this whole talk about, we had it about our oldest daughter's senior year. Kind of said, hey, here's what what are you thinking? She goes, I want to go to a big school and I want to go out of state, which is dollar signs, right? So I'm like, okay, fantastic. I'm like, you're really good at volleyball. Do you want to do that? And she's like, no, I want to be in a sorority. I want to go to one of the bigger schools in the SEC. And she did, and she killed it. And she graduates in December, so I feel like we won, but it was very expensive. So, and then our other child, obviously, if you know the names, if you know the family, but our other child got a volleyball scholarship, went off to a non-Power 4 school, but is going to be out there playing volleyball and doing fantastic things and having a great time, and it's all paid for. So having the money talk, it's up to you as parents, and parenting's like a crapshoot anyway, but it's up to parents to kind of have that. It's like, here's what we have set aside for you, and if you're going to spend all of that, then there's probably going to be like student loans involved, or it's kind of a good talk to have with kids if you feel comfortable. And every family's different. So I just want to throw that out front, and we will end with it, and hopefully we'll get some questions about the money talk from the family perspective. But here's what we're going to talk about in the background here. Standard disclaimer applies. I'm not trying to sell you anything. This is pure education. Do your own due diligence on anything you heard in this presentation. More disclaimer information is available at AnkerstarWealth.com. Okay, tuition planning. Well, if you don't plan, life plans for you, right? So if you're like, well, my kids are already 18, and the youngest is 18, and they're already in college. Well, you probably didn't score all that well in planning because that's beforehand. But planning starts whenever you decide to start planning, right? And I have a military background, hence the flight suit. The more you plan, the more you understand the situation you're going to have on your hands when the event actually happens. So if you have maybe a newborn or a younger child, you might think, okay, probably should start talking about this now and come up with what you want to do. I'm going to show you some numbers as far as if I do this, here's how much I'll have for college. And then of course we'll take a look at some ugly numbers, which is college tuition. Hot take, I'm not thrilled with what colleges charge for what you get. I do think there's value in having a degree. I'm not sure that the premier colleges really command these prices that they ask. That's my opinion. You do you. Your kids will do themselves, will make decisions for themselves, that sort of thing. But you can spend a lot of money in the education business, and I'm not sure it's all worth it. But we're going to talk about generally how do you fund whatever it is your children are trying to do. So that's the process. So what's the cost of college? You have the tuition fees themselves, which if you're going in-state, that's a nicer number. Versus if you're going out of state, then obviously that's a more challenging number because it's going to cost you more. In most cases, it's like double. So there can be some sticker shock there. If you look at it in totality, meaning if you have a senior out there right now and you are looking at going to Alabama and you say, oh, it's $40,000 a year, and you go times 4, it's $160,000. You're like, no way. Well, don't look at it that way. Kind of look at like year to year, like what it costs, that sort of thing, and then try to tackle each year after that. But there's the basic tuition. Then of course you got to live and eat, right? Food and housing after that, and then books and supplies, which is the biggest coup out there, right, on why you have to buy a new textbook for $200,000 a year. Having some lighting difficulties. Hold on just a second. There you go. They're back. You have these books. You go, you can buy a used book. Sometimes you can't buy the used book or the used book, and you got to pay full price. It's a coup. And then you have transportation, which I have heard some hilarious stories of kids that are sitting on their parents' cards with Uber, and they're Ubering like 5 minutes to class every day. And at the end of the year, the parents get like this $2,000 bill for Ubering to class instead of walking. It's kind of crazy. So there's lots of colleges beyond the tuition thing. And if they join a sorority, then oh my gosh, get ready for another $1,000 to $1,200 a month to extra money that's out just so they can be part of that team. Okay, don't forget inflation, right? And college is one of those things that inflates much greater than regular, right? So if you have like a 2% a year type inflation, well, if that's what like eggs are going for, we talk about like gas prices, that sort of thing, then you could have like an 8 to 10% a year tuition inflation. I don't think that can last forever. I do personally think that the salaries that higher education commands will come down over time. I think they're largely inflated. That's an opinion. Hot take, if you will. But you can expect that when we plan this out, if you use the software that we have, Money Guide Pro, it'll take today's dollars and kind of forecast that inflation to when Prince or Princess, as I like to call them, is 18, how much it's going to cost. So if you have newborns now and you're trying to think, hey, what should I put away a month? Well, if you put away the amount that you pull out Excel and you do a little bit of math yourself, and you put that amount away, well, college tuition prices may go up 2x by 3x by the time they're 18, which would be like, holy crap, well now I'm significantly undersaved. So anyhow, we have a tool for that if you were interested. Corey put these now, fast forward 20 years, you're looking at, what's that, 67,000. I mean, the numbers get big fast. And if anything inflates, college inflates. It's crazy. Okay, so let's think about some saving strategies. So the most common that everybody knows about is 529. Well, I should say the most common is Bank of Mom and Dad. But one level below that, if you actually do some planning, it'll be the College 529 plan. So they're sponsored by different states. We're with Schwab, ours is with Kansas, and you can go anywhere in the country, so you're not tied to the state. So that's kind of the 529 is the most common. And then you have what's called the Education Savings Plan, which is the cover down. There's some downsides with that, and you can only put in $2,000 a year, which doesn't go very far when you're talking about college. But that's another plan that's out there. And then sometimes the state has specific plans, like the Texas Tuition Promise Fund. There's also a Louisiana Start Plan that I'm actually more familiar with because I have a client in that, which you buy credits at current day prices, which then can be used when Prince or Princess is college age. But there are some restrictions with that, which is why we usually get away from that. But those are the different strategies that are out there. So the pros and cons of a 529 plan, which again is the most common, is you put money in, you don't get a break for putting money in. But the money that you put in grows tax-free. So if you put in, say, $10,000 when Prince or Princess is born, and then it grows to, say, $30,000, you're not paying taxes on that $20,000 of gains, right? As long as it's used for education. Funds can be used for a lot of things. They can be used for private schools. If you're in an area where maybe you're not so thrilled with the public schools, private school tuition is a thing, and I will say that it is pretty expensive. Eye-watering what you can pay in private tuition. Anybody can open the account, and the reason I bring that up is because it's not just parents. So if you happen to have grandparents, like your parents, so the kids' grandparents, but your parents, that are doing just fine in life and have some extra money and they're wondering what to get Prince or Princess for Christmas or for their birthday, it's like, well, let's talk about maybe donating, giving a gift to their college fund, right? If you can successfully execute that strategy, you can end up with a lot more money in your kids' hands. And I say that from experience because I was able to kind of talk to my parents about, hey, instead of getting them the next best toy or whatever, it's like, let's split whatever money you give to them for Christmas or their birthday and put half of it into their college savings. And there's also another option if you don't end up using it, but we'll talk more about that later. Okay, here's the math you need to know, right? So when you look at this chart, if you do $50 a month, and this talks about when Prince or Princess is born. So I will tell you this, I don't know anyone that has started exactly when their kid was born. Because you're a little bit busy, especially when it's your oldest kid, right? You're like, holy crap, there's this noisemaker thing in my life that dominates everything, and you're getting adjusted to that. But within the first year of having a child, that's when you can kind of think of, okay, things have died down, things that we're settling into life, right? And now we can start thinking about the 529 plan. So if you put, there's 3 examples here: $50, $150, and then $250, and then it takes it out to when they're 18 years old. There's some cute graphics at the bottom that kind of talks to where they are at their stages in life. But basically, this is the monthly projected out for 18 years. And you can see that if you start with $50 a month, yep, $16,000. Okay, well, that's better than zero. If you've written checks to colleges lately, that doesn't get you that far. 49, okay, now you're getting to where you can get a year, year and a half, 2 years. You go in state, maybe stretching that into 2.5, 3 years. 82,000 in state, probably in the ballpark. Might have to come out of pocket a little bit. If you're out of state, then you get them halfway there. But that's kind of the different plans that are out there as far as funding. But in addition to doing a monthly contribution, you can also do super funding. So when you think of what this chart is telling you here is a couple that puts in the same amount, that $100,000. So the slide on the left right here, they put in $5,000 a year, basically for 20 years. So that's the math. So 5 times 20 gets you that 100,000, and it grows to 247,000 by Prince or Princess's college age. However, if you have the means, which again you gotta have the means, to be able to super fund, which means you pull it all into the first year and put 100,000 in day one, but never touch it again, you can see it grows up to almost $500,000. So not everybody has that opportunity. I got that. You don't have 100,000 laying around. But the important part of it is there's probably some fine balance. If you have like 25,000, if you put in 25,000 at birth and then you put in like $100 a month, we have software that calculates all this out better than we can do kind of off the cuff. But you're gonna be much better off if you can super fund it. So what are the super funding rules? So you take the annual gift tax exclusion, which in 2025 is $19,000. And you're allowed to superfund, meaning you can pull 5 years worth of that funding into 1 year. So 19 times married, you can double it because you can both do it. So that's what, 190,000 in year one. So the numbers get probably bigger than you're gonna actually fund, right? So if you're thinking, I wanna put a lump sum in when they're born because we have it and we wanna make sure we lock it away for college, then yeah, you're probably not hitting those limits. So talk to an advisor, talk to us about what you can put in when it comes to superfund. Okay, there's also a Coverdell education savings account. This is my personal favorite, even though I did not do it for either of my children. The reason I didn't do it is because the limit is $2,000 annually. I was in a position to where I could save more and I wanted to save more, so therefore I had to go with the $5,000. But if you can only do $2,000 per person per child, then the Coverdell is a pretty good way to go. And the reason I said that is because with the Coverdell, as you can see in this chart up here, that you can actually go with individual stocks and bonds. So if you think, okay, I want to put $2,000 towards my newborn's college, and it's 2025, and I believe in humanoids, which is one of my popular themes. So the fund for that is COID, K-O-I-D. So you can put $2,000 a year into COID and then let that see how that does, right? A 529 plan is fun. It could be all over. You could love it one day, throw it all into crypto. That's all. I mean, you can go for whatever risk level you want. You can put it into that and then take the ride from there. So it's not for everybody, but certainly if you've got a smaller amount and you want to take some risk with it, it's a pretty good option. Okay, the Texas Tuition Promise Fund and the Louisiana Start Fund and other state-sponsored funds, you're basically buying credits at today's prices. I don't like these funds, but that doesn't mean they're not right for you, okay? So it's one of those things, if you kind of think your kids are gonna stay in the same state, and you kind of think we need to really maximize what we have, it's a pretty good path to go, right? You can kind of lock it in now at today's prices, and then when Prince or Princess says, I want to go to Alaska University, you go, no, because we have your money in the Texas Tuition Fund, so here's a map of the state of Texas, and here's all the schools, and you pick one of these, right? You don't pick Arkansas because you pick Texas. So it does kind of hamstring the kids a little bit because they're tied to where they go, but depending on your relationship and how much money you guys have as a family, maybe you're telling them where they can go. So, like I said, not a big fan, but if this is all you can do, it's not a bad way to lock it in. Okay, this is a chart put out by the College Investor that says where the actual funds come from. And the reason we put this in the slide deck is because we wanted you to see that the largest place that college funds come from is your paycheck. So, let's talk about that for a second, in the fact that one of my favorite phrases when we're talking about this topic is there are no retirement loans. There are student loans, but there's no retirement loans. So depending on how you're doing in life, you may have the ability to peel off 25K, 100K, 200K, 250K, whatever, to be able to pay for their college, or you may not. But don't sacrifice yourself to pay for the kids, right? That would be dumb, because you're creating a problem for them later on when you're like, hey, I gave you everything and now I'm 80 and I don't have funds to take care of myself. And they're like, well, that's on you, bro. And you're like, oh, she'll call me bro and I'm 80. Okay, fantastic. So don't think that you need to pay for your kids' college. There are other options, but a lot of parents do, right? A lot of parents are like, look, it's my problem. I owe them the college education, which I don't agree with, but a lot of people think that way. So, consider, if you will. If you have a nice high earning job, or between the two of you have, a nice income, you can do that. Scholarships are next. Obviously those are earned. If you want the major scholarships, those are going to be merit based for academics. There can be athletic scholarships. There can be scholarships anywhere in between. However, there's a million little scholarships for like $500 on every high school's website that nobody applies for because they're 18, right? And they're too cool to fill out a form for $500. You can, and like some of the nods in here, yeah, you can do that yourself, right? It's ultimately probably your money that's coming out of pocket, so you can sit there and act like Prince or Princess and fill these forms out. Or you just go, you know what, we're not doing that. The next one is grants. Grants means you have to have a fairly, there are income limits to how much you can get for free money. So if you're above that, don't expect free money from the government. And then college savings plan, and then there's everything else. So really, if you want to help yourself out, doing the college savings plans are the way to go. Okay, there are some at the bottom. Parents' retirement plan. If you're pulling out of your 401k to send Prince or Princess to college, you better have a 7-digit plus 401k to be doing that move. Otherwise, you're jeopardizing your own future. So consider. All right. Financial aid options, so FAFSA.org is the form that you will be told by your high school, at least here in Texas, that it's mandatory to fill out. It is not mandatory to fill out. You can call them and tell them that. They may not like you, but it's true. They will tell you it's mandatory, but you have to declare everything on these FAFSA.org thing, and you have to upload your tax forms, and there's some things that a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not doing that, because all it's going to do is tell me, no, you don't get any money. It's like, oh, thank you. I need to show you my whole life for you to tell me that I make too much to get free money. Yeah, I don't need to show you all that. So, and Round Rock High School doesn't need to make me do it, so we just don't do it. But if you're in a position where you're making, a couple $100,000 or less, or $150,000 or less, I don't know exactly where the limits are, you can fill this out and see if you qualify, and then you have to take that case by case. There are people that are specific college fund advisors. There's, I'm sure, great ones that are out there, but like any financial market, they're shark infested waters. So I don't know, I never talked to any of these people, but you know, if it's a free seminar, it's free for a reason, right? So, so beware if you're talking to a college person about financial aid. Okay, scholarships. Obviously, if you're a benefactor of a scholarship, you see at the bottom there around 7% of college costs are funded by scholarships. That's a great place to be. They're not free. You're going to do the work. You're going to show up. having a D1 athlete in the family, it's not the easiest path. If you're looking for easy, you don't get under a commitment to somebody. I went through ROTC. The government paid for my undergrad, and I'm very thankful. First of all, it was a lot of work. Yeah. So, and then I had to serve after that. So there's always kind of that catch out there. So if you're getting scholarship money, just think about that. They're going to get, whoever's giving you the money. There's a payback at the end of the day. All right. Next ones are grants. If you ever hear the grant word, that's free money. You do not have to pay it back. Generally, there's income limits associated with this. So if you're getting a grant, just consider. But there, it says between 30 to 50% of first year undergraduate students receive grant funds. So again, go to FAFSA.org, go through that drill, and then it will spit out a number and says, here's your amount of free money. Take the free money, right? But then the rest is probably going to be on you after the grant. Work study, don't forget that, even though Prince and Princess don't do any chores around the house, and they never have, okay, maybe your kids, maybe your mileage may vary, but asking them to actually do work for their college is something that the bigger universities have. So we have, two of the biggest Texas universities listed up there. I won't say which one I like better, but the important part is at the bigger schools, there are all kinds of jobs, whether it's RA, teaching assistant, this, that, everything else, to where if you're hurting for money and you really want to go there and you're really smart, if you will, meaning not necessarily smart, but you have the grades to qualify for some of these programs, there's programs out there. So it's kind of one of those, it's like, if you can pay for it as parents, great. If you can't, and junior wants to go off and do great things, you have to look junior in the eye and say, you're gonna have to do some of this stuff to make it all happen, and then you'll find out how motivated junior actually is, or whether they're like, heck with it, I'll just do something else, right? But they're out there. Okay, last one, student loans, hot button issue. No, it's not free money. I don't think we're ever, if we were gonna ever see student loans just forgiven, we've probably, I think, been through that phase of the U.S. government. I don't think that's coming back, but hey, I don't know, I can't predict the future. But if you take a loan, again, for a very expensive non-collateralized loan, right, because you're supposed to go out and make all this money, but what if you get a loan for a degree that doesn't necessarily pay a lot? I don't know. It's not a great math problem sort of thing, so just take a look at it. But the good news is if you take a loan and you don't really pay anything while you're in college, at the end, you can pay it off. So here's what I talk to parents about, because they're like, should I take, say their goal is to go to a university that costs $250,000. Let's throw that number out there. And they have $100,000 in savings. And they're like, Steve, what strategies are out there? And I said, well, let's talk about your kid and let's be honest. How committed are they? Is this a kid that is like, when they start, they're going to finish their college education. There's really no doubt about it. They've always profiled as such. Or maybe it's a child that likes to have good ideas and it goes off and they may or may not finish their first year of college. So the difference between those two scenarios is I was like, well, with the one that's committed, you can go ahead and use your funds first until they run out and then put them on student loans and then figure it out later. And if you as a parent want to go ahead and pay off those loans because you feel like that's what I have to do as a parent, then do so. Or they get out and they kick butt in the real world and you try to be like, hey, I want to pay those off, and they're like, Mom, Dad, I got this. I'm going to pay it off. I guess that's theoretical, but it could happen. But if they're then in that case, use your money first for college, exhaust it, and don't try to time the market. Just whenever they have bills come in, you use your college money, right? However, if you think that they may not finish, or you're like, oh man, I don't know, I just really like to see them finish this first year before I start committing my funds, put them on student loans for the first year. It's you'll get a lot of attention at the kitchen table when you look across and say, Prince or Princess, first year's on you. Okay, so if you don't finish, you're gonna have this huge bill, and then you're gonna go figure out what it is you're gonna do, where you're gonna work, and then you have this huge bill to pay off, which will take you 5 to 10 years to pay off because you didn't finish your first year of college. So pay attention. And then if you finish that first year, then we'll come in with our money. So it's kind of that mutual buy-in sort of thing. And, you know, I think it's an interesting strategy. All situations are different, but something for you guys to consider. The FAFSA process is here. I will say this is I don't like government websites because I spent 20 years in the government, and this one is no better than any of the others. It's very invasive, takes a long time. Says like takes 10 minutes, takes 10 hours, whatever. I didn't like it, so I stopped doing it. But you know, that's how you go through the process. And again, not mandatory, no matter what your school tells you. Other options, we're here in Texas, right? We're in Syntax, Austin Community College, right down the road. Free tuition for college graduates up through, you know, 2 years for free. There are some conditions where you can get a full bachelor's for free, you know, for the next basically 5 years. So pretty good start. So when I think, you know, both of our girls were kind of, they benefited from being able to go to larger schools right away. However, if there had been any doubt, it would be like, no. Go to 2 years to community college, finish off all the, you know, the baseline classes, right, and then go to the big university. Nobody's gonna know. The big plaque on the wall says where you graduated from, not where you spent your first 2 years. So get over yourself, get over what your friends think, get over all that crap, do what you need to do to get that college degree, would be my take. Company specific, if you happen to work for a company that does some tuition reimbursement, awesome, love that. Military service, yeah, maybe your prince or princess isn't cut out for that. It is not for everybody, I will tell you that. But if, you know, they can show up on time and do what they're told and kind of like, yeah, it's okay to follow rules. And you go into the military, you get all kinds of college paid for. I have my undergrad paid for, I have 3 master's degrees, all paid for by the United States government. I worked my butt off for all of them, but the opportunities were there. So consider military service if that's the right thing for you. Last thing, okay, hot button issue, choose an affordable school. Yeah, everybody wants to go to Baylor. Well, Baylor's cool, right? But it's like, I don't know, it was out of my price range. 60, 80,000 a year, I'm not paying that. That's ridiculous, right? And I said that intentionally. Ridiculous instead of ridiculous. But, you know, choose an affordable school. That's where, you know, stay in state if you have to. Who cares, right? Get the degree and move on. Okay, last thing, the college, you know, we started with this and we're wrapping with it. Look, parenting is a crapshoot, right? And there's things you talk to your kids about, and there's things you don't talk to your kids about, and sometimes there's things that, you know, spouses don't have great chemistry on talking about anyway, and sometimes money is that thing. So it's all up to you. Handle your situation as you see fit. But if you can, and all the parties to the conversation are mature enough to be able to handle a money talk, we went what I call open kimono with our girls right around when our oldest was a junior, and said, hey, look, so here's where we are. Here's what we've got. This is money that I've been saving. You know, since you kids were born, I put it in, you know, a monthly amount. And I'm like, here's what we got. Here's for you, and here's for you. And in our situation, you know, it happened to work out to where student A used all of hers, and the student B didn't need hers, so it went to student A. And you know what? We will figure that. It's not like it's lost if that happened. We'll square that up later. But I wasn't coming out of pocket when the scholarship person didn't need any of their money, right? So we gave it to the non-scholarship person. We pressed on as a family. We'll square that later. But they both kind of knew where we're at, and they know what had happened. And if everybody's mature enough, you can kind of talk about those things. That's about your only way of convincing your child that they don't need to go to party state 5 states away for 3xing money versus going to party state and state, right? So good luck with that conversation. All families are different. Mileage may vary. But it's certainly if we're talking about getting student loans, you know, and if you have experience, share your experience if you can. Again, if the maturity is there. But yeah, I mean, borrowing money to go to college to where you're not going to be out of debt till you're in your 30s. I mean, it's like literally going through life with this big like lead blanket on it. So try to avoid it if you can. So, all right, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for listening in and coming out in the rain, which is picked up again because we have a steel roof so you can hear it. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
I have a kind of a two-part question, Steve.
Okay.
First part is, and if I'm invested in 529, I put a bunch of money at. Hey, I knew from day one that I have a child and I want to go to college. There's a bunch of money left over in it. They go to a state school, right?
Okay.
They don't burn through it all. What do we like? What happens to the rest of the money?
Okay, that's one. Do you want to hold on?
No, I'll do one at a
two?
time because I'm notorious for stacking.
So the question out there is, hey, you have money left over after college is done. So a couple things. College may never necessarily be done, right? We don't know if you look back to your own lives and what you knew at 21 or 22, whenever you left college, of like, I am not going back to this place. In other words, you may end up going back to college later. So you could always save the money and go to college later on. It counts for master's degrees, PhDs, flight school if you decide to graduate and then become a pilot. So a lot of things that can apply to it. So that's one answer. However, if you have money left over because the child got a scholarship, like our second child, we had money for her, we used it for the first child, but if we had money left over, you can also withdraw money in equal amounts to whatever the scholarship was. So in that case, you're not penalized for, say you have 10 kids and they're all geniuses. Okay, what are the odds? But, say, and you saved all this money where you can pull it back out, right? So you're not tied to it because you just put it in there if the kid earns a scholarship. But the third plan, which just came out of Secure Act 2.0, was if there's funds left over, you can also go up to $35,000 into the Roth IRA. So just peeled off a little bit of an alphabet soup there. But if you know what a Roth IRA is, if the kids graduate and they go off in the workforce, you can take leftover 529 money and fund that. Yes, it's only $7,000 a year. Yes, I just did the math too, so that would be 5 years worth of funding, and that's the max you can do. Or you can leave it in there for a long time and let it continue to grow, and then maybe it goes into their kids, and I'll talk about that as a closing thought. So what's your second question?
Would you ever recommend a family split the strategy for the future investment for their children into the 529, which you already talked about, but then also supplement it to a certain, split with a UTMA?
So question is,
and does it cause complications? What are the pitfalls?
No, I know exactly what you're getting at. So the question is, okay, so you're in a place where you have the means to set money aside for the child. Do you do a 529? Do you do a UTMA, which again is just a taxable account for a child under custodial rules? Or do you do some combination of in between? What are the pros and cons? So generally, I would advise that if they are profiling as a college student, you'd want to max that out and make sure they get up at least $100,000, maybe $200,000 for that. So the pro is, if you put it into college funding, whatever it grows, as long as you use for education, you don't pay taxes. If you put it into a UTMA, UGMA, any of the custodial trust funds, then they do pay taxes. And here's what I ran into with my kids, and it'll probably come off as a little bit like bragging, but I'm trying to use it as an example, is I did just that. I put a whole bunch of money into the 529. I like stocks. I've always liked stocks. So here it is, my oldest was born in 2004, oldest was born in 2007. If you were paying any attention at all during 2007 to 2009, yes, it hurt. The market crashed. What does that mean for investors? Big smiles, right? Yes, everyone's bleeding. I'm bleeding right there with you, but I'm also buying everything I can. So I jam, this money into a UTMA and buy Apple stock, buy shares of Apple stock. And guess what? Coming out of that, it slingshotted out of that. My, $1,000 investment turned into $5,000. Here's the problem: if you go to sell it, you'll run into the kiddie tax, and the kiddie tax is pretty low. It's not low for a lot of people, but if you have over $1,200 of capital gains, that's free. You get above that, and there's a whole bunch of rules that kick in. And if you get above $2,400, you're paying the estate tax, which is 40%. So by the time I realized I'd made so much money, more timing than skill, I'll own that, is the fact that it took me years to unwind that without tripping a tax bill. So I unwound all of it and kicked it over to the 529. So it kind of depends. If you're trying to get them money into their hands that they can have when they graduate high school and or college, where they can go spend to buy a car, buy their first house, get into their apartment, whatever it is. I just realized there's going to be a tax bill associated with that. And if you're not very good at investing, then there won't be a very good tax bill. But if you happen to be really good at investing, there's going to be a huge tax bill that's going to be the kids' tax bill and not yours. So there's a lot to think about there. So if you're gonna do things other than just the college savings, I would talk to somebody or do some pretty aggressive self-study. So, all right. Okay. Any other questions? All right. I'll close with one thing. What's the maximum you can put in 529? Well, let's answer that a different way. Why would you maximize a 529? You can, and I would say you would need at least $5 million in net worth before you would even consider this strategy. But per child, or per living child and grandchild, it is a cheat code for the pretty much ultra high net worth or high net worth, not ultra, but high net worth folks, 5 million and above, to be able to max these out. So what is the maximum? Well, it depends on the state, and I think the Kansas one is right around $500,000. So you could super fund these things to get them, to where there's $500,000 in each account by the time the kids are 2 or 3, right, or 5 or 6. So you can jam it in there. We'd have to look at the specifics. Why would you ever do something like that? Well, what you're doing in that case is you're generating multi-generational wealth for your entire family, which means, in words, if anybody wants to become a veterinarian or a doctor, you can slide, because it's completely portable between several people, right? So you can move the money around to where everybody who wants to get whatever degree they want can go achieve that degree without cost being a factor. And all those gains, which if you've been faced with a large capital gain bill in your life, you're not going to like it. So therefore, if you can protect it from those gains, this is one of the avenues for you to do so. So again, I wouldn't even really entertain the conversation until we're talking 5 million above. But certainly if you're north of 10 million, then it's something that's a pretty slick way to keep the money in your family for educational purposes only, for generations that are alive and generations that are yet to be born. So fairly savvy strategy there. So, all right, I will close with that. Thank you so much for you guys coming out braving the rain, and thanks so much for listening in online. We will catch you next time. Have a good day.